since it's the summer, I figured, you know what, why don't we build something for the outside? So I put together a planter box here, and it's made of 100% cedar. It's got a, let's see, what's that, a beach scene on one side and a boating scene on the other. It's got all dovetail joints on the corner and drainage in the bottom. And then what we'll do is we'll put in some landscape fabric in here to hold the soil in. So if you want to build this box, check it out. Here we go. Hey now. I began this project with 4 pieces of wood, 2 10-inch pieces for each side, and 2 24-inch pieces for the front and back. This cedar that I got is directly from Lowe's, and as you can see, one side is smooth and then the other side is rough. So with that, we head over to the jointer. Before I joint the boards, I mark the bottom of the board and which side I'm going to use as the outside face with just an arrow. As with most home center lumber that I buy, I don't care how it looks. I run it through the jointer just to make sure it's square. Just make sure you do the face side first and then move on to the edges. Next, I just bring the boards down to a 1/2 inch, which is our final dimension we want on the width of the board. Now that I've run the boards through the jointer, getting one edge square, I'm going to run the other edge through the table saw just to square up the other edge of each board. When routing dovetails on the dovetail jig, there's a few things that I like to do. One, I like to have a backer board, which is that top piece of wood on there. That will help possibly stop any blowouts or tear outs. The other thing I like to do is I like to go right to left on the jig, but as you'll see shortly, once you're in the actual channel of the tailor pin, I like to go left to right. And just make sure that you don't hog out too much material. The main thing you want to avoid is a blowout or tearing a pin or a tail completely off. And as you'll see, no matter how hard we try, accidents always happen. And I just like to dry fit everything, so we see we've got a good fit here of the dovetails. Here's what I was talking about before. If you look on the bottom there, the one pin actually blew out. It was a knot. It wasn't because we were going too fast. So I left it in because here I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, because I'm sure a lot of people have encountered this halfway through a project. Something happens and you've either got to throw it away or roll with it. So here I'm showing how I was going to roll with it. I'm just trimming a tail in half, and I'm going to go ahead and trim the pins as well. Now we're getting to the part where we're using the CNC to carve our engravings on the side. These are the images that we're going to be engraving. I use the Inventables X-Carve system, which seems to do a pretty good job of engraving for a fairly reasonable price. So the next step here is to get some paint, which I use an acrylic water-based paint. And what we do is just fill in, you don't have to be pretty with this, but fill in every groove, every V groove that you've carved with your CNC. Don't worry about being clean. We're going to take care of that shortly. So next I just take a 220 grit sandpaper because this is cedar and it's very soft, so 220 seems to work pretty good. And I just run right over everything. This is going to take off all the excess paint. Our V-grooves are deep enough that we don't have to worry about sanding the image off of the board. Just go ahead and get it all off, get all the excess paint off. And get ready, here's the money shot. Now we just take a brush with some Type On 3 and just paint the tails and pins with some glue, and we're gonna put the joints together now. One thing I recommend is before you glue on the remaining side piece, check the orientation of the image on the other side and make sure you got them the same way. Now here's a board that I cut for the bottom of the planter box. I'm using everybody's favorite pocket holes to secure the planter box bottom to the planter box sides. Now here I'm just simply securing the bottom to the sides of the planter box. One thing I want to recommend, don't use drywall screws or anything like that, or wood screws, because they will simply rust out. Make sure they're an outdoor screw. Otherwise one day the person with the planter box is going to be moving it somewhere and the bottom's going to fall out on them. And as I'm showing here, you don't have to sand the excess paint. As soon as you're done painting and it's dry, you can wait till after you assemble the box, and then you can go ahead and sand everything when you're doing your final sanding anyway. For the finish on this box, I chose SPAR Finish by Rust-Oleum. It's made for wooden boats, so I figured it would be able to handle the UV rays of the sunlight plus the water environment of being outdoors. I put 2 coats on, sanding in between, and it left a great finish and great protection.
So hopefully you were able to follow along with how to make this planter box. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, click the subscribe button. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a good one. And quit asking to see my box.